Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. It's really, really lovely to see you all. Because I haven't actually met all of you, I only recognise you as little sort of stamps at the top of a screen. So I will try to address you by name, but I can't guarantee that I'll manage that. So if you could introduce yourselves when you speak first. It will help the minute takers, but it will be an enormous help to me as well, okay? So thank you very much for that. And for anyone who doesn't know who I am, I'm Councillor Kate Weller, and I'm the chairman of the Corporate Parenting Board. And I say again how lovely it is to see you all. Now, this is a problem, isn't it? Because you need to keep really close to the microphone. And of course, my notes are over here, and I can't see them. That's fine. Thank you. Are we all here? Apologies. I've got apologies from Councillor Ryan Holloway quite recently. Any other apologies? Okay.
So I love it. I've only just put the microphone on to say that Councillor Andrew Parry is in a meeting at the moment, and he'll be running slightly late. So he gives his apologies. He'll be, I think, about 6 o'clock.
Thank you very much. Any other apologies?
Thank you, Councillor Weller. Yes, we do have other apologies. Elaine Okopsky, Dorset Parent Carer Council. Simon Fraser-Brown, Service Manager for for Young and Thriving Commissioning. Lisa Linscott, our Principal Teacher. Kim Rickford, the Head Teacher for the Forum Centre Blandford. Councillor Valerie Patrick, if I'm pronouncing that right, sorry. Patrick, thank you. And Jan and Martin Hill, representatives for Dorset Foster Carer Association. And we also have Lenny Charlie, Independent Fostering Panel Member, who's given apologies, as well as David Webb, Service Manager for the Youth Offending Team. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So we're a small and select group this afternoon, which is wonderful. Can I ask, do we have any declarations of interest from any members? No, doesn't look like it. And Sarah Jane, did you want to introduce?
Thank you, Chair. So I'm Sarah Jane Smedmore. I'm the Corporate Director for Care and Protection. I'm deputising today for our Executive Director, Teresa Levy. So really pleased to be able to be here and to do that. And really just some highlights for everybody since we last met as a Corporate Parenting Board. So it has been a busy time, as ever, in children's services, and particularly for our children in care and care leavers. And we've had our annual conversation just last week, this time last week, actually last Thursday, which is something that all local authorities, as you know, will do with Ofsted. And it was our turn last week. And Ofsted took the opportunity to have a look at the work that we've been doing across children's services. But for the purpose of our meeting here today, a real focus on the work that we've been doing for our care leavers. A lot of work, and as you're aware, we have the Care Leaver Delivery Group, which reports to this board. Really pleased to say that Councillor Kirby leads us in that work as chair of that group, and the impact and the pace that the Care Leaver Service in particular have worked at since our visit from Ofsted in September has been tremendous, and Ofsted recognised that back to us. We know that all of the things that Ofsted highlighted to us, recommended to us, we've been able to take action on and have completed all of those actions. And the impact of that means that we know that our care leavers are getting an even better service than the good service that they were getting beforehand. So lots of work has been undertaken to make sure that we've got capacity within our management team, within the care leaver service, to really get alongside our PAs in the best possible way to think about supervision and talking to them about care planning for our young people, and a lot of work also with our colleagues in adult services and partners to think about housing options for our care leavers, as we know that that's been a particular area that we've wanted to give focus to. So we've been able to do that and made some really good progress there as well, whilst always wanting to increase our fostering family and our supported lodgings providers, and we've been able to do that too. So just a real reflection of all of the hard work of our social workers, PAs, foster carers, and in particular this time our care leaving service, who've really made a difference in moving things on from that Ofsted action plan. And should also say, Chair, that we've welcomed 10 unaccompanied children just in the time since we last met. So in total, we have 18 unaccompanied children now in our children in care family. And as you'll be aware, local authorities have been asked to do this. This has been a direction from government to do this. We've welcomed that, and we've really thought hard about how we can find the best places and spaces for those young people to live and to thrive, to get education, to get support, get the health services that they will need as well. So working closely with our partners to do that too. Thank you, Chair.
And I think it's probably timely to just ask you, at the moment we don't know what the situation with Ukraine is going to be, but we've got policies and processes in place should that arise.
Thank you, Chair. If you'd like me to respond to that. So just as a council, we're working hard to keep focus on how we would support families from Ukraine, waiting for government direction really as to how that should best take place. But there are people working within this council very hard to make sure that we'll be ready for whatever we're asked to do. And we know that we've had success previously with resettlement, and we would want to build on what we know works well and really think hard about how we support any people and any families who are resettling here with us.
Very much indeed for that update. As you can see on your agenda, we have minutes from the 29th of April, the 5th of August, the 16th of September, and the 6th of December. I don't propose for us to read through all of those. I trust you have all read them over. I did try to make sure that they came out in a timely fashion so that they were still sort of fairly in your minds as you were reading them. Does anybody have any comment that they want to make? If there's something, it may be that there's something there that you want to send an email to Matt about or anyone about afterwards. But if there is anyone who'd like to make a comment now, otherwise, if you are able to approve, I will sign them at some point in the next couple of days.
Thank you, Chair. Richard Biggs, Vice Chair. Just a question, really. While I was reading through those, I looked at a number of them. All of them have, obviously, questions from members about certain points raised. But what we don't really know is whether those points are answered. Now, sometimes there's an email immediately back, but there's a danger that we could start losing track of issues, and it's a case of, oh, well, it'll be dealt with, and so-and-so will come back to us, and we don't know, because it might have gone to an individual member. So for an example, I remember on the 5th of August one, to do with the final Ofsted report in Hayswood in Wimborne, asking whether, well, trying to ask that the local members were kept informed because they weren't even aware that there was a residential home in their ward. And it was just a point made, but I'm not sure whether that, I would hope that Teresa or somebody got back to the two local members and that was dealt with, but just that connection, I think, perhaps could get lost.
Perhaps, Matt, if you could do a sort of an audit of that, just to make sure that questions that have arisen over that period of time were actually picked up.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to offer some reassurance just on that question. So, Matt, I know will absolutely do that piece of work, but Councillor Biggs, both myself and Louise Drury, who's our head of children in care, met with the two councillors. And I know that Louise has kept in a relationship with them as well and kept them updated as to all things that are happening at Hayswood. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Can't see anybody else with any hands up, so can I just have a show of hands that you approve the minutes, and then I can sign them as soon as possible. Thank you. Thank you. Right, item 7 on the agenda, which is the care leaver offer. We've seen the little video there, and we'll that will be sent to us so that we can look at it more carefully, and will be updated. But Matt, if you'd like to continue.
Thank you, Councillor Weller. I know in previous corporate parenting boards, the members have seen the original offer plus the update, and the purpose of the document that has been circulated is the full offer for 21 into 2022. I would like to, just in summary, draw on some key points of the offer for our care leavers. So, for example, the set-up allowance of £2,000, and that's really to look at setting up our young people into a new property, everything from electric to some of the bills that they're paying, to really get them set up in their accommodation and settled. That can be taken as a one-off or over a period of time to allow that to really work for them. Alongside that, we've also got an agreement that our Dorset children living within Dorset are not subject to council tax, and if in shared accommodation have a 25% reduction, which is giving our young people a huge start in life. I would also like to draw everybody's attention to Curtiston Avenue. I know that I've briefed the board previously. Curtiston Avenue is a huge resource for our care leaver service, and we're very keen to get that up and running, as it will give us up to 7 self-contained flats, as well as a training flat for our young people coming up to 18 to really get them settled in accommodation. And it's a local provision offering single and multiple occupancy. So a lot of work's going on to that, and later in the year, I'll give further updates as we look to launch that. And really an exciting project for us all to be involved in. We've got our young people as well working alongside us in participation, through participation people to really make it an environment that they've had input in. And that will hopefully be a success story moving forward. Another big opportunity for us, and I've mentioned to the board previously, around the Care Leaver Covenant. It's had a huge impact in terms of accessing local business, local resource, and developing opportunities, and also what our offer will look like in the coming years. And we continue to work with them, with local businesses, looking at developing business events that are tailored to our young people to really get the most out of the offer in the years to come. The offer that I'm presenting to you today will obviously be reviewed on an annual basis, and there's a lot of development work being done with other partners to really get the most out of it. Another key part of our offer is the Reese Foundation that went live on the 1st of June 2021 with a good uptake from our young people. In a number of ways. It covers off everything from advice around mortgages and legal issues through to employment, also through to counselling sessions that they may want to access on a face-to-face or a one-to-one basis. So that's been a key offer for us, and it has done well. I would like to take this opportunity as well, as it's mentioned in the offer. We are having our Care Leaver Week later in the year, and planning has started again, and that will tie into the Care Leaver Covenant and drawing in our local communities to really bolster our offers and offer for our care leavers in years to come. Thank you. Any questions?
Do you have any questions, Councillor
Jones? Thank you. Do you know how many care leavers we actually have on our housing register at the moment?
I'm sorry, I would have to go away and have a look and come back to you for that detail.
Would be quite useful. I'd like to know how long they've been on there, because I know from my own experience with the work that I do locally with people on housing register that it can be cumbersome and take a while, and I think it would be good for us to know that. Thank you.
I think it's a really good document. It's really well presented. I suppose my question is, how are we getting this information out? Is it just as people are about to leave, or how can they access it, and how do we know that they're reading it?
Thank you, Councillor Biggs. So there is also, alongside, obviously, the document that you've seen, and the video would have summed it up, Hannah is supporting us to develop how that looks and feels for our young people. We're developing that onto our webpage and how they can access that. So, for example, through QR codes is something that they were quite keen on. It is advertised through our PAs. It is also sent through when it's been updated and put on the system to our care leavers to access, and if they should wish for a hard copy, which has been some of the feedback we've had, we will also provide that as we move forward. So this is very much created in partnership with them. Thank you.
Stella.
It's good that we're providing such a lot for care leavers, but there are some local charities. There are some local charities in towns, especially with this, I know one in Dorchester, which provide for young people going on to further education. Or do they? Are we told? Are they all told about these, or do we know about them?
Sorry, thank you. If you have any specifics about charities that we could work with, absolutely. I would love to make connections with them to bolster our offer moving forward.
Charities in Dorchester who provide for lots of young people.
I think it would be a good idea for us to send out with our own membership, but to all members, if they are aware of supporting charities, to let the officers know, so that we can develop strong contacts with those people. Yes.
Thank you, Chair. Kay Wright, Youth Voice Manager. I was just going to add that the charity Friends of Dorset Care Leavers, we provide a lot for our young people, and those details are on the website under the Care Leaver local offer. So I think being able to gather that information and build a sort of a little record of around the council area would be really helpful.
Drew?
Chair, for goodness sakes, I really hate these microphones. Am I on? Thank you, Matt. First of all, it's a brilliant document. Not that I've added a huge amount to it, but I can see that a lot of work has gone into it, and a lot of work has gone into it, not just over the last 6 months, but over the last few years. And I take your point earlier about the fact that the document, I view it as very much a living document, and you say that it's going to be reviewed every year, and I think that's really important. I think that we still need to view the fact that our work is not done, and that it's up to us as councillors and officers to always be looking for how we can improve that our care offer to support our young people. And I think this is probably the best time to highlight something, the Care Leaver Covenant. So Councillor Jones, Stella mentioned charities, but this is open to all organisations across Dorset, and they can sign up to the National Care Leaver Covenant. And I tell you what, if you want to go and view it, it's online. It's I'm going to say www.careleavercovenant, something like that. He said, looking at Matt. But I think what's so important is that by signing up, through your organisation, signing up to support our care leavers, by signing up, you're able to support them through things like apprenticeships. I'm looking at Sarah Jane now for more exciting things that they do, through support into work, etc. Financially, if your business is able to support our young people or care leavers through their products, then that's absolutely fantastic, and we can add that in.
Yes, sorry.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor Kirby, and absolutely right. So any interest that anybody has, any connections that you have business-wise, any friends, it's just think of us as a family and the way that we would with our own children. You get connections for them. If they're interested in a particular place to work, you think of who you know who can help to give them work experience or those kind of connections. So I think, as Councillor Kirby says, just really creative thinking as how we think as a family, but also our ambition here. So this is very much in the moment. So we've had to do a lot of work to get to this space. There's a group of people working on what the 3 to 5 year forecast is for our local offer, so that we can bring that back to Corporate Parenting Board as well, so that we can see we're building something for the future which will absolutely stay alongside our young people. Thank you.
Thank you. I have to say, I like the document very much, but I particularly like, there was a little bit that says accessibility to the code of practice, but also user-friendly and attractive to the care leavers, and I think that's a critical point. I really like the fact that it wasn't too full of what we all know is council speak, with the words that you never use in normal conversation, but I think other members will agree with me. We end up using, and we think, good heavens, is that me saying that? It's not normal language. And when we're doing this work all the time, it's evidenced here, and we have to keep it at the front of our mind all the time. Talk to the young people and say, if I say such and such, do you know what I'm talking about? And invariably they will say no. You explain, and they say, oh, you mean that? So let's say that in the first place, so that not only do we understand it, but anybody else reading it does as well. Yes, sorry.
Thank you. I was just going to just reinforce about the video that was played earlier. So Hannah is working on the young person's version of what you might be reading now. So it's actually going to be probably altered significantly, which is why she's writing it to take it back to the design team. So it's something that young people want to pick up, look through, scribble on, highlight, and it will. So yeah, it won't be that version again.
It's much better than previous things that I've read. So we're certainly moving in the right direction in that respect, I think. And I'll just say now, following on from Sarah Jane and what Andrew was saying, I was going to mention it later, but it's timely. I think we here on this board know our corporate parenting responsibilities. I think an awful lot of members have no idea that they are also corporate parents. We all are. So I've asked that certainly in the next term, but I hope actually in this term, we'll do much better training for all members and for staff as well. And that will give us a great opportunity to harness those people who have skills and knowledge and information and contacts that can offer that to our young people in exactly the way that they would for their own children and grandchildren and nieces and nephews and so on, because that's what we are. We are the adult family members of these young people, and we should be thinking of their well-being all the time.
Yeah, I do, Chair. Thank you. And I really welcome those words, especially with regards to ensuring that all council members are aware of their statutory responsibility and statutory duties. And in fact, actually, I'm going to look at, there you go, Louisa's over there with a smile on her face, because she knows where I'm going to go with this. So my view is that we need to do a sort of grassroots approach in terms of for all members, but also officers, and that will start as soon as they begin to apply for the council. So this is my dream, is that even on the job description, if you're applying for a job at Dorset Council, it sets out that you will be a corporate parent, because legally they will be, and actually it sets out again what their duties are and then so immediately that journey is thinking, what can I add? What can I add? Because everyone can add something to our young people in some form of support. And I think that it goes on to think like how actually every single part of this council, every single directorate has something to add to support our children. And I always give the example of somewhere like Moores Valley Country Park. You know, I'd love to see it so one day we can have free access for our care leavers and our children in care. And I always say, like, it's almost like our young children, you know, trying to access the family garden. Why on earth would we charge for it? So for me, I'm very passionate about that. And I think that every single directorate, all our directorates need to work together with ourselves. And we'll be doing that little bit of work to be able to say, look, what can you offer us? I better be quiet, because I know that I'll get in trouble because some of these are quite expensive, my ideas. But yeah, I know that saying that it doesn't always have to cost a lot. It could be something like one of the officers taking, you know, such over in one of the highways officers being able to take out one of our young people and showing them how to drive. I don't know about you, but my father took me out. Like, we still don't talk, but I know that my parents helped me to learn to drive, and I think as corporate parents we still have to have those responsibilities. And I know that lots of people are passionate about it. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks very much. I think that's absolutely right, and it's a great aspiration. I suspect it might scare people in parks or highways if they know that the responsibilities that fall, as they would think quite rightly, upon children's services actually fall upon them as well. But it's, we'll get there. It might take a little while, but we will get there. Thank you. Well, you are. I may not be. Item 8.
Sorry, Councillor Luck's just had her hand up.
Oh, sorry, it's a luck.
I just wanted to say that part of our offer that's important is the advice that we give and being on the other end of a phone. I'm just thinking of one of my young people that moved on into a flat and went to the supermarket and bought about 8 bags of shopping and didn't think about how to get it home. Or she went and bought second-hand furniture but didn't think about how she would get that home, who would deliver it for her, etc. So it's things like that, the practical help that we can provide is all important, really, to help them settle into an adult life.
Thank you for that. I think that's absolutely right. It's all very well giving them the money to move into their flat, but actually they need personal support and help, and particularly after the last 2 years where they've become very isolated in many ways. But yes, so you've got yourself a bed, but how do you get it home? So absolutely right. Thank you. Anybody else with their hands up?
Just to come back on that as well, I'm extremely proud of the care leaver service and my personal advisors that really absolutely get alongside our young people. And the feedback that we get from our young people, our care leavers, is they really value that relationship. And we've worked hard through quite difficult times with COVID and the pandemic to really have that face-to-face contact, staying in contact in other ways as well where needed, virtually, so that we're absolutely there for them. I just wanted to put that there. Thank you. Cheers.
Thank you very much. Item 8. Who's presenting this in, Simon? Thank you.
Thank you. So I'm presenting this evening on the paper about challenge cards. I know you've all received that. So really just a summary is that we really want to move away from challenge cards so that we are bringing corporate parents closer to children and young people. By doing that, we're role modelling good adult relationships with them, and that's a relationship-based approach which we adopt as corporate parents too. I'll move on to the presentation in a minute if that's okay. Thank you. We want to encourage conversations with young people to find solutions together. We don't want to have the situation where young people are just presenting us with problems and asking officers to go away and fix it. We really want those conversations together. Thank you. Can I do the presentation now, please? Thank you. So I've just got you some examples, really, of what that might look like and why we really want to move towards the report cards. Thank you. If you could have the next slide. And just a reminder that co-production is about relationships where we share power and we plan and deliver together and recognise that both have vital contributions to make in order to improve quality of life for people and communities. And this is what we want to achieve by using report cards. Thank you. This is our current promise. Hopefully it's recognised by you all. So this on the left there, we've got what would be happening is conversations with CLIC, so that's Care Leaver and In-Care Council, and those conversations identify opportunities for co-production through the report cards that we create after we've had conversations with them. And what we're trying to achieve as well is making sure that the promise is something that is live and that we're accountable to. It's not something that is written and just sits somewhere on our website. So by linking our report cards and theming that with our promise, we're really sort of checking back in all the time on how we're doing. And just in the bottom there, there's a purple square which says that we are currently reviewing that. One of our care leavers is doing that work with Louise and Matt, which is fantastic. And then they're going to do a little bit more consultation with other young people themselves before presenting the reviewed version of the promise. Thank you. So this is just an example of a report card. I appreciate that's a bit difficult to see. So the one on the left is a full report card, and that is created after a meeting, and it shows what we were talking about and who was there. And we really do quote what young people say. So I've just lifted out the middle section there so it's a little bit clearer, and you can see some examples of what young people are saying. Thank you. And then, so this links nicely back to what Matt was saying about the Care Leaver local offer. So this was a report card from National Care Leavers Week in October, and we were looking at the local offer, and so a lot of work that has been undertaken since has been based on what young people were telling us. And again, this is a tool that we use with them where we create lots of sticky notes about all the ideas that they have. Thank you. And there's another example there of what they don't want. And Matt, you made reference to QR codes. This is all the ideas that they had about how they want to access the Care Leaver offer. So the report cards created will feed into Care Leaver Delivery Group. The opportunities for co-production are highlighted. And then obviously we want to invite members to get closer to young people so that we can find those solutions together. I think is that the last slide? Oh, there we go. One more. So with that report card, we sent it back to the young people who attended, checked in with them that it was what they said, shared the findings with Care Leaver Delivery Group. We took it to our content designer to discuss what was possible and what wasn't. So there's already been quite a few updates on the website for the Care Leaver offer. Some of those aren't live yet, they're in the background, but we've been working hard and our care leavers have been choosing photos that they want on it. And our content designer also has come back and done a show and tell with young people about how they've been doing. That's it, thank you.
Thank you very much. Anybody got any questions? Stella?
It's a comment, really. I think it's great that all the young people are going to be more involved in this because it is all about their life, isn't it? And young people do have really good views. I recently went to a Dorset Youth Council meeting, and the young people were there. Some of the things they said were amazing, and we need to listen to them a lot more, and I'm pleased we're going to do.
Andrew?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I know that in the recommendations, it identifies that the cards will come to the corporate parenting boards, which is fantastic, but I always worry about ownership. So I think it would be nice perhaps if we somehow formalised that some of the cards came to here for us to review in a more formal session. Sorry, it's because I've got mine on.
If that's what you'd like, Andrew. You can't. I think because you're a Care Leaver Delivery Group, I think you'll have the opportunity there to sort of help us field that and get them into the right places and invite the right members to be involved in some of the co-production.
Gosh, this is really awkward, isn't it? I think that's really important. I think one of my greatest concerns is that engagement, and that we've always seen the same. We previously have, for instance, seeing the same care leavers again and again and again. I think that anything that gives us a wider flavour is really important. So yeah.
I think it's quite a radical solution. When I first looked at this, I thought, I'm not so sure about this. But because I think I like to see the clear points raised and then the answer. But I like the approach. The approach is definitely right. And I think we need to give it a chance to see if it works. If we're still getting the same questions in a year, 2 years' time, it hasn't worked because they're not either some questions are being dismissed or not even getting onto that card, or they just haven't, the solutions weren't appropriate. So I think we should absolutely give it our, approval to go ahead and see how it works. But yeah, watch this space, I suppose, isn't it? Thank you.
So I think basically I'm going to be asking you for a proposer and a seconder to carry out this action. But basically what we want is to monitor it very carefully and make sure that it is achieving the improvements that we hope it is, and be prepared to tweak it if necessary. Sarah?
Thank you, Chair. I just wonder, I'm kind of jumping the agenda a bit, but it would be helpful for us to reflect back on this conversation when we talk, I think, our last item about champions from this meeting. And I do wonder if that gives the opportunity, just as Councillor Biggs is rightly saying, for members to really get underneath some of these issues that our young people are raising and to go and see for themselves and ask the questions and to bring back in that way. And there's something about really using that scrutiny role in that way, but it does jump to the last agenda item, so they do join up.
So I think, in fact, the one thing that I've discovered over the last months is that all of these things link into each other. Each piece is good, but the best thing is them working as a total. So they do all link together, don't they? And we need to be aware of that. And so not be afraid to tweak it as it becomes necessary. And thank you very much, Richard, for that point. So can I have a proposer and a seconder for this action, please? Councillor Jones, Councillor Stella Jones and Councillor Carol Jones. You're just trying to keep me on my toes. I know exactly what you're doing, but you weren't as good as you should have been, because I should have been asking you on item 7 for your support. But you're too late. You're too late, I'm afraid. Well, but can I formally ask for your support for the recommendation on item 7? Right, and a seconder? One of the Joneses? And all in favour? Thank you very much. We're now properly formally back on track. It's a whole new thing, isn't it? Instead of looking for right to speaks and bobbing about and wondering who that little face is there, we're now having to juggle other things. Item 9. Matt, I think this is you again.
Thank you, Councillor Weller. I know that a full data pack has been shared with all, but I'd really like to just focus on some of our achievements and then look at some of the areas that we want to focus on moving forward as well. So just to start us off, you would have noticed from the data pack that our rate per 10,000 is still heading in the right direction. There are going to be some challenges with that, though, moving forward as we welcome our unaccompanied asylum-seeking children into Dorset. And again, I'm looking at ways of how we can track that so that there's a distinction just in our data as we are working extremely hard to progress our children into a permanent option as soon as possible. And that's how we've got to the place that we are now. But certainly there will be potentially some challenges moving forward, and I will be reporting back on further corporate parenting boards. In terms of pathway plans, not so long ago there were a slight performance issue that we've mentioned, and I'm pleased to report that we're back on track with 81% of our care leavers having a pathway plan, and we continue in the right direction. As we head towards the 90% is where I'm aiming for, if not higher. I would also like to highlight the issue that we've had in terms of some of our care leavers being in bed and breakfast. We've had a real focus on our care leavers in bed and breakfast and how we progress them. So now when a care leaver finds themselves in that situation, there is a meeting within 24 hours chaired by myself, and then there's action plans put in place that are regularly reviewed. We've now reduced that number down to 1, and there's active plans to get that young person out of bed and breakfast. So that has been a lot of work and a hard work and dedication from our personal advisors and the service, but we are in a better place. Another area that you may be that you may have picked up on is more of a national issue, but certainly an issue for us in Dorset in terms of our initial health assessments. We continue to have a drive to have our consents completed within 5 working days, and then the impact of having, with the intention of having those assessments completed within 20 working days. We work alongside our colleagues, and I know as a senior management team that's been raised with health in terms of the percentage rates that we have. I do have a breakdown per month, and we continue to work hard to make sure, and smart to make sure that our consents are done in time. And I'll continue to report back on that in the coming months. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That's right. Andrew?
Thank you, Chair. If I could just touch on the on some of the health improvements. So we had a meeting, myself, Sarah Jane and Claire Shields, as a result of, I think it was a corporate parenting board, last corporate parenting boards, and we are looking at the health statistics, and I think one of the things that really stuck out to me when we were having that conversation is around assessments for children that live out of the Dorset county area, and us having to, for instance, find the parent to be able to sign off the fact that this child needs a health assessment. Can be quite time consuming. So it's a really difficult task, actually, really difficult and quite complex. So I think that although we see the figures here, there is depth to it. But saying that, that's not for the fact that we are trying to improve it. And I think moving forwards, we're looking at working closer with more effectively with other local authorities, especially those that are our immediate neighbours. So although it's not great at the moment, it will get better. But I think really, particularly with those those children that have come into care that are placed quite far away, I think it really needs sort of national legislation to come through and a bit of a change nationally to be able to ensure that there is that policy that we all work together. So there we go, Chair. So it's complex, but we're working on it.
Thank you. Sarah Jane?
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Councillor Kirby. Indeed, we are working very closely with our health colleagues, just as Councillor Kirby has said. And what we do know about our children is we don't really have shocks and surprises. So we know which children are going to come into our care. Very rarely do we not know beforehand. So we're able to line up, those really important documents and to work with families to get us into that space. Obviously, with our unaccompanied children, it is a slightly different conversation because they are here without an adult. So we're working hard with our health colleagues, and they're really putting their mind to how do we make sure that we keep this process very speedy, because we know for all of our children that health assessment is so crucial. So absolutely keeping very close eye, and just as Councillor Kirby says, working hard with local authorities who aren't our own, where we know our children are living, to make sure nationally we're in the same conversation. It's really important.
Has anybody else got any questions?
Lost exactly where of the page, but it's to do with the health outcomes. Generally, there's an awful lot of areas where, for reasons not within our control, really, the immunisations, etc. The performance we just can't seem to meet, and it's been the same ever since I've been on corporate. I can't see what is going to change. It's never changed. We get the odd little blip, and everyone thinks, "Oh, that's it," but it just goes back to where we were. I'm at a loss to suggest what we can do.
Thank you. Is that a matter of procedures? Is it something that we need to be lobbying for procedures to change, or?
Chair, would you just like me to, and I don't want to speak on behalf of my health colleagues who are not here today, but I think it would be absolutely worth asking, definitely Louise Smith from our Children in Care Lead for Health will be able to bring an update to answer just that question. I think it's a question that she will welcome being able to bring you more information on.
Andrew, you want to speak?
Just going back to the health figures, and I think one of the things that I'm also quite quick to forget is things around the vaccinations. So it's still actually our young person's choice as to whether or not they're vaccinated against certain things, and I think it would be wrong to force them to vaccinate. So I think there will be an improvement on the health outcomes, and as Sarah Jane mentions, we are improving and working towards getting those up to a standard that I think that is acceptable. But yeah, there are challenges, and some of those are around young persons' choices.
Thank you. Carol?
Sorry, yeah, just looking at the percentage of care leavers who are in employment and educational training, that seems to be going down, and I'm wondering whether that is linked to the percentage of care leaves with an up-to-date pathway plan at the end of the month. Are they connected? I mean, is further intensive work put into it? It's dropped a little bit since December. I'm just, where are they? What have they done? What are they doing?
Thank you for that. So what I am proposing is there is a working group currently at the moment. We have our not in education and employment team set up so that we can explore those figures, and I could provide maybe an updating report to the board. That's something that we've noticed, and we're starting to dig into the data around that, just to make sure that our house is in order in terms of if there's any data cleaning that needs to happen, but also on a bigger scale, and hopefully I can provide a report to the board.
Thank you. Is that something we can be involved with, or Andrew can be, or a member can be involved to see what is really happening underneath the layers of it at all?
We would welcome that, absolutely. Thank you.
Yeah, cheers, Chair, thank you. It goes back to our very first, the agenda item 7 around the care leaver covenant. You know, we as corporate parents, we can be pushy corporate parents, and we can ensure things like, for instance, one of the ideas I'd love to see is for Dorset Council, when we come to procurement, to ensure that those companies that come along and want to work with us, they offer apprenticeships for our care leavers. It's those small changes like that, I think, that will make a really big difference, as well as apprenticeships in Dorset Council. So I think there's a bit of work there, but that we can do as members and as the council to be able to push that out.
Yes, but I think we have to delve a little bit deeper. I mean, are these young people, do they have the educational attainment to be getting these jobs? Is that underlying some of the figures? And I think then we just need to go a little bit deeper.
Thank you for that, and I think that's right. And if they haven't attained those levels, what support can we give them in order to do so?
Thank you, Chair. And Councillor Jones, I think that's absolutely the right conversation, because we're looking at data here, and of course every part of this data is actually one of our young people, and they've got their story to tell, and they're walking through different parts of their life. They might be parents, it might be that they just, emotional health and well-being is so impacted at the moment that the thought of training or employment is just so far away for them. But it's what are we doing? The question that we're asking ourselves here is what are we doing to help support to get them into the right place? So really welcome that challenge, and absolutely, members coming right alongside would be really helpful, and bringing those stories forward so that it's not just a data set, but actually, we have some real life examples. Our young people would be happy to help us do that, as would our PAs. Thank you.
Thanks very much. Stella?
Mental health issues are a growing problem with young people. It's nationally and locally. Are we sure we've got enough backup to follow up all cases of this so things don't get worse and worse for these young people?
So absolutely, for our young people, we have strength and difficulty questionnaires that we are doing as routine for our young people, so that we understand any stresses and pressures, anxieties that they may have. That's regularly reviewed, and also, for any of our children, whether they're placed in Dorset or outside of Dorset, we're really looking at tracking them accessing services and looking to unblock any barriers that they may have, so they're accessing services in a timely way. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Matt. Thank you, Chair. And just also thinking about the people who are caring for our children, so our foster carers, care providers, what we're really, within our own fostering service, we have psychologists who will work alongside our foster carers, and more the providers who are caring for our children will have the same facilities, we need to make sure that they're being used well for the adults who are caring for our children as well. So not just the direct support that goes to our children. And again, Louise Smith would be able to include that in her updating report for you, but also how we support those caring for our children and our social workers who are alongside them as well. So it's bigger, and I completely agree. The concerns around young people's mental health, it's a top priority concern really, and you know, we're walking alongside our young people, and it's going to be more challenging as we go forward, I'm quite sure. But what's important is that we have the right support to be able to give our young people and our carers and our staff really.
Very much. I listening to everything that's being said, and I understand all of it, and it's encouraging. One thing that concerns me is that we've got questionnaires, and we're engaging, and we're consulting, and we're talking to both our care leavers, our children in care, and our foster carers. What we need to guard against is that we aren't on an overload, that all we ever do is ask them questions. All we ever do is say, is this okay? And what can we do for you? And because it would drive me insane. I have to say, I would disengage if you try to engage me I'm using council speak here, aren't I? If you if you try to engage me too much, I will be disengaged, you know. And as a 16-year-old, I'd have been hot-footing out of all of that. So it's really important that we know what people are thinking, both our adults and our young people, but we have to do it sort of low-key.
Thank you, Chair. Just relationships are key in this space, and I think it's how we know and love our children, how we understand they're different. Every behaviour is a communication, and it's us understanding that. But sometimes as adults, we can become frustrated with those behaviours, and that's where the support we provide to our adults who are caring for our children stops that overload of a million questions, which I agree would drive me completely mad also. So it's how we make sure that we give people the right skills and the right insight to be able to take those cues and to know and understand when it's right to ask those questions, or maybe to say nothing, but just to be in that space. So you're quite right. It's a whole range of tools that we need to use. Thank you.
Yeah, Chair, it goes back to what I mentioned earlier about you have the same young people answering the same questions. The most, I can't want to say it, engaged young people. And I don't think it's always an accurate reflection of what's going on. And that's why I'm going to challenge you. And as I've always said, you know, COVID's over now. We need to actually go and see our young people, take them out. I'm sure that we could go to Wagamama's and actually have those conversations with them, and those, as Sarah Jane mentions, those relationships, and see actually from the horse's mouth what the issues are, how are they feeling. And I think that's going to be really key, because if they're unhappy, it's very difficult to explain that you're unhappy on a questionnaire, or through to someone that you view that you want to keep happy. So I think it's really important. So I think my view would be over the next few weeks that as a corporate parenting board, that we go and see our young people, we go to them, to a place that they suggest, and we have some fun.
I have to say, I think that's absolutely right. I think, you know, we've talked about it all through lockdown and these strange times that we've been living in. And, you know, at the moment, I don't think, well, I know that I don't know any of our young people well enough to pick up whether they're happy or not, to be honest. But as we got to know them, we will pick up those things. And the best way of doing that is over a pizza or wherever it is. It's just engaging in that informal, friendly, you know, whether it's roller skating, ice skating, or eating a pizza, abseiling down Hardy's Monument, whatever you... Yeah, I can say that because I don't mind abseiling down Hardy's Monument. But you know, whatever it is, those are the ways of getting to know our young people, isn't it? And how they see us as not stodgy old people. Yeah, anyway, thank you. Yes.
Thank you, Chair. Absolutely welcome that idea of bringing you closer to children and young people, and happy to offer some support to members who would like to do that. We also have dates planned out for pretty much the whole year, including our new family days. So there's lots of opportunities to come and connect with children and young people and their families. So welcome some emails, please. Thank you.
As a first point, could you send out those dates to us so that we can get them in our diaries as soon as possible? Try to make sure that we're, at least some of us, are free at any time. We don't want to flood you with loads of us at a time necessarily, but if we've all got them in our diaries and you're doing things that maybe some of us have a skill at, abseiling down Hardy's Monument, we can link in.
Super, thank you. I was just going to say, yeah, that would be, we can definitely send those out. We will carefully make sure that it's not overpowered as well, so we will manage that. So we might have to sometimes selectively let you down with the best intentions. You're going down Hardy's Monument. But yeah, that'd be wonderful. It's something we wanted to achieve for a while, so let's try and do that this year. That'd be brilliant.
Yeah, before we move off, adoption, which is on page 45, is perhaps an area that we don't talk about so much, more often about fostering. And there's quite a good story to tell there, and certainly Dorset is performing very well in the turnaround times compared nationally, which is great. Although I do notice, despite having 60 adoptive families recruited, only 16 have been finalised. I know that's not unusual, and these things take time. But something that in the comments section just meant nothing to me, and it said 4 were delayed by the Somerset ruling. And if I don't know what it is, I don't know how anyone else knows what the Somerset ruling is, but I think we shouldn't put in things that mean nothing to non-social worker type people.
Good question, and we should have clarified that further in the narrative. So in Somerset, it's the way we make decisions around our children who are to be adopted. So the whole country make decisions in the same way. So the agency decision maker, and for yourselves, it's me who does that currently for adoption, makes a decision on whether it's in the best interest of a child to be placed for adoption. And it's just, that's the decision that's made, and obviously the court makes the final decision about that. Within Somerset, what the judges there recognised was that actually the ADM, the agency decision maker, was making decisions without a full adoption medical. So what they had in front of them was the initial health assessment and not the full adoption medical. So what the judges are doing, and Andrew McFarlane, who is the president of the Family Law Justice, I hope that I've got that right, has taken a look at this, because actually it's not unique to Somerset. This is an issue that's gone up and down the country. And it could be argued that coronavirus has played into this, because there's been initial health assessments and there's been some delay in that longer adoption medical. So what's happened is the courts across the country have just held on and said to everybody, just hold the space whilst we just take a look at this, make sure that we're right judicially, and then as soon as that recommendation is made, and I believe it's going to be the week after next, we'll be advised on next steps, and then we can work out what we need to do. And the figures are so tiny here, so please forgive me, members, when I don't give you figures, but there are just a small number of young people that this applies to for us, but it hasn't held up them being matched and placed with their families. It's just that final order that's to be made. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Does anybody else have any questions on this at all? Stella?
Just said, I think we ought to comment on the paper that's just come out from the County Councils Network on the future of children's social care paper. That has a lot of things that are nationally the same as ours, and I think you all ought to read it. I think you've all been sent it now, but it's very good reading.
So we've done that, haven't we? We've received the report, so thank you very much for that, Matt. Item 10, Complaints Manager Report.
Thank you, Chair. If I can take this one. If I could just start by introducing myself. I'm Mark Eyre. I'm the Service Manager for Assurance. I'm based within the Legal and Democratic Services, and my remit includes complaints, but also alongside that, a few other areas like information compliance, emergency planning and risk management. The report you've got in front of you today was actually compiled by Tony Bygrave, who's our complaints manager. Unfortunately, he's not able to join us today, and I know he's very sorry not to be here, but I'm joined by my colleague Liz Williams. She's our assistant manager for the complaints function, and she's here to help me with any queries you may have, because she's a lot closer to the data. So the report you've got in front of you today is the 2020-21 annual report, and within that it includes an element of statutory reporting. Very conscious we're now some 11 months on from the data that's presented to you, but what it does do is it helps to paint a picture of the complaint climate, and particularly during that unprecedented times that we had whilst we were responding as a council to the COVID crisis. So the picture that it paints is that overall for Dorset Council, there was a 76% increase in the number of complaints since the start of the COVID pandemic. That was particularly evident in some of our place-based areas, but as the chart on page 51 also highlights, we did see that increase across children's too. To balance that though, we equally saw a huge increase in the number of compliments made in relation to the service that the council provides. From a children's social care perspective, despite that year-on-year increase, complaints from children in care and advocacy are still really low proportionately. So most children's social care complaints are from parents that are unhappy with records held about them or how social care is impacting them as parents. So where possible, the complaints team work with children's services officers to try to resolve complaints informally and outside of the statutory complaints process. So by adopting sort of a good practice, listening and resolving those complaints as early where we're able to do so. Probably the best thing to refer you to within the report is page 50, which is the coloured chart, and that highlights some of the key messages for the year. So if I just pull a few bits out from that. In terms of the complaints themselves, it's a very small proportion where it's found to either be fully or partially justified, so some 81% where no fault has been found. The local government and social care ombudsman, they provide an external challenge to the complaints. So in those cases where the internal complaints processes have been exhausted, but the complainant remains unhappy with the outcomes, they can refer that through to the ombudsman. And it's pleasing to report that during that 2020-21 year, whilst a number of complaints were referred to the ombudsman, none were upheld. So I've referred already a bit to the COVID pandemic. What that response did mean was that timescales for managing complaints did suffer a bit. There were capacity pressures, both in terms of the internal complaints team, who were at times moved off to support frontline response because of the customer handling skills that they have, but also within children's services itself. So overall, during that year, we didn't meet the timescales in all cases. So there were 22% of complaints outside of the timescales as a result largely of these pressures. Similarly, we were unable to focus as much as we'd ordinarily like to on learning lessons from complaints because there was a lot more focus on sort of firefighting those higher complaint numbers. That said, the handling of complaints for children's social care complaints, they do tend to receive our highest priority in terms of team attention. So during that financial year, or during the current financial year, we have been able to increase capacity within the internal complaints team. And what we're hoping that will do is enable a greater focus on a number of key areas. Firstly, to continue to provide that independent eye and quality assurance role, to act as a critical friend for children's services colleagues, but then really importantly, to better facilitate learning lessons so that as a council, our service that we're offering and we're providing continually improves. And I think in the end, regardless of whether a complaint is upheld or not, there will often still be learnings to be gained. So in that respect, we have regular reporting where Tony, the complaints manager, attends the Children's Services Management team and feeds in their details of any trends, key messages and learnings. So that was the key points I was going to raise, Chair, and if I pass back to you for any questions.
Thank you very much. Councillor Carol Jones?
Give me an example of some of the learnings.
I don't know if you want to come in there, Liz.
Yeah.
Is that okay?
The learnings are really varied. So if you, on the back of the report, there's about 2 pages which give you examples of learnings. They are the learnings as they're provided to us by the managers, and they're included in the report, but they're very varied. It can be as simple as make sure you put your out of office on, which sounds very, very obvious, but can cause huge problems if you don't, to far more complex ones where we've got 3 or 4 lots of learning, some of which might take 2 or 3 months to implement. So there, as I say, on the back of the report, there's a whole list of the learnings that we've got, we've had from that annual report. Yes, what we're doing now, obviously, as Mark said, last year, quite a number of staff from the team were redeployed, so we were heavily down on numbers. But we are fairly well staffed now. We have 1 person on maternity leave, but apart from that, we're fairly well staffed. So now all complaints, once they have had a response, will stay open. So if there's some learnings from the complaints, they'll stay open and stay assigned. Well, they're actually on hold, but they're showing on our database as open to the person allocated in complaints to monitor them. And then we will seek an update from the managers, from the relevant manager, as to whether a complaint has been implemented and how it's been implemented. So it could be, a complaint could be open for 3 months if it's a very complex learning, which involves something that is, a large body of work to implement it. It could be just open for a couple of weeks because they've said they'll implement it. We also keep it open because quite often the promises are made. There's not only learnings, but within the complaint response, promises will be made to a young person that we will do A, B, and C. So we'll also keep it open to make sure that we do A, B, and C, and that we don't just shut it and then 2 months later we've got another complaint saying, well, you said you do A, B, and C. You did A and B, but you didn't do C. So we've got now we're better staff. We're more able to implement the learnings, but also implement ensure that any promises within complaint responses are implemented as well. So.
To say within Children's Services, so Lisa Reid, who leads our quality assurance service, works really closely with you, Liz, and your team. We're really grateful to complaints for the really close attention they pay to make sure that we don't lose any of this learning along the way. And Lisa and her colleagues make sure that we bring that learning back into a monthly meeting, which we call QPAG, which is the Quality of Practice Group. I had to think hard about what that was. And we talk about that learning, and we then make sure that we audit and we take the impact to make sure that actually that learning has made a difference. So it's fine to say we're going to do things, but we need to check that they've actually made a difference in the long run. So that's what Lisa's service will also do.
It's really good. Thank you. Andrew?
Yes, Chair, thank you. I might just be having a funny 5 minutes, but do we make a note of complaints from our care leavers?
Yes, so we log complaints from care leavers, and we do have quite, if I'm very truthful, we have quite a few complaints about the transition service where there's not enough liaison between children's services and adult services, and that's an area that I know we're working on heavily because that is quite a difficult, it can be very difficult, the transition process, and we do receive quite a number of complaints about that. Mainly just lack of communication, really, between the 2 teams.
Can I bring Matt in for a moment, Andrew, and then...
Thank you. I just would like to offer some level of reassurance. We have a really good buy-in from multi-professionals, adult services, housing, children's services, and I chair those meetings on a monthly basis, and we have a tracker that tracks those transitions so that they're starting early for our young people coming up to the age of 18, and we overcome any obstacles as a working group. I've got that currently 12 months in advance, so that will start to embed and take hold, which will hopefully have some impact on what you're describing.
So I haven't had a care leaver complaint for a very long time. I'm one of the more senior members in the team, so the more complex cases tend to be escalated to me. And as I say, it was an issue, but I haven't had any care leaver issues for some time, or transition complaints for some time.
Thank you. Sorry, I'm going to ask Sarah Jane to come in, and then Richard wants to speak, and then Andrew come back in, okay?
Thank you, Chair. Just very quickly to say that evidence is the impact. So an issue has been raised through that complaints process. We've put in a process which Matt has been able to talk about, and then complaints team have been able to say that we haven't had the same complaint. So to me, that's impact, and obviously talking to our young people as well. But it's a beautiful example of just how it works. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm very clear how children in a residential setting will make a complaint, either using a sort of complaint system. They'll be made aware of it, that the advocates, etc., staff will press upon them how they go about making a complaint. But in a setting of a foster child, how does that work? And are there any complaints that have come from foster children against either their social worker or even their foster parents, I guess?
Yes, we do. The foster children do make complaints, and we do receive complaints from foster children and obviously from foster carers as well, and they're dealt with in the same way as a child in care complaint. So yes, we do receive them.
So I'm guessing, I mean, what we don't know is, this is very interesting in social care, I suppose we're really interested in looked after children, the numbers, are we talking a handful in terms of complaints? Yeah, as a sort of percentage of this overall? No.
A huge amount of them. One of the major complaints we have are warring parents. A lot of our complaints are warring parents who try to use the children's social care complaints process to score points off each other. That's one of our major areas of complaint. But yeah, children in care complaints are prioritised, but they're not huge in numbers. No.
Thank you. Sarah Jane.
Thank you. Just to come back on that point, I don't think we can take reassurance one way or another. What we need to do is make sure that we know that we're talking to our children, which I feel confident we are, and that our children are aware of how they can speak to their social worker, their IRO, other really important people to them, and to know that if they want to make a formal complaint, they know how to do that. And I'm confident as well that we share that information with them. So it's hard. If I want to offer you reassurance that that's a low number and that's a good thing, I would want to say, of course it is, because we're using other ways to speak to our children. But I think it's really important that the board thinks about what those other ways are, and we can share information on just that.
Very much. Andrew.
Yeah, thank you. It's really interesting to see, and I think it's really useful. I think the only thing that I would highlight, Chair, is that it would be quite beneficial if the care leaver complaints also came to us at corporate parenting as well. So we had a record of that, and we could find out exactly that, how our young people are, how our care leavers are, what their complaints are, because we still have that duty of care, don't we? So I think this is the right place for them, and I'd like to see that reflected.
Yes, I would agree, and that would be good. Thank you. Yes.
Hi, Kate Saunders. I'm the service manager for NIAS, which is the National Youth Advocacy Service. And one of the things we're very keen on is ensuring we resolve and help young people to resolve issues that they may have in communication and those sort of things, and support them through that rather than opting for complaint. So it is something that we're very proactive about, ensuring that when a young person comes to us and says, oh, we want to make a complaint about social care, we talk to them, we say to them, you're very entitled to do that, but what we would like to do is help you to think about what is the best outcome you would like for this, and we take that to social care rather than going through the complaint. So hopefully that's something that we're very passionate to try and do some early intervention on before it gets to a stage of a complaint.
Thank you very much for that. And I think that's an interesting thing, and it's an interesting subject for us to discuss in a workshop setting sometime, because it would be useful to know how many of your interventions prevent the complaint process, because ideally we want to solve the problem at its earliest stage, don't we, before it gets escalated to a complaint and to a major incident, as it were. So that's very interesting. Thank you.
Going to say that's what we're really passionate about in NIAS, is not allowing it to get to a point where we're breaking down communication, but actually ensuring that that is developed and strengthened rather than the opposite.
And thank you for that, because I'm sure that's the right way forward. Any other questions?
Just a quick one. We're talking about solving. I'd really like to look at preventative work, and perhaps the report cards. Maybe that's a step towards prevention rather than solving a problem that's already existing. Thank you.
Thank you for that, because I think that's absolutely true. It's we need to preempt it before it gets to any further, don't we? Thank you very much. We're just asked to note that report, and I think it's been noted, and you've all had an opportunity to ask any questions. Can I welcome Councillor Andrew Parry? It's nice to see you here. He did inform us. So you were suitably noted and missed. Thank you. Thank you for coming to us now. If he did, we're not going to tell you. Item 11, and Kate, this is now you, isn't it?
Yes, thank you. So I'm Kate Saunders. I'm the Service Manager for NIAS, which is the National Youth Advocacy Service, which took over the contract for the commissioning for the advocacy service for young people in Dorset in August of last year. So we've currently got to our 6-month point. It is fair to say we've had some teething issues at the very beginning. However, those are now resolving, and we are in a position now where every young person who is being referred to us for advocacy is being allocated to an advocate and is receiving a service if they wish to do so. And that we are now seeing engagement at a very high level. We've only had 3 or 4 people who've not engaged with our services since the beginning of January, so we're really excited. I have to say, sitting in this room, I am overwhelmed with the passion that I am hearing for young people and also for the corporate parenting in Dorset, because it's not often you sit and hear people challenging each other to work in a way that is as good as a parent would be. And that for me is something I'm just wanted to sort of say. It really, I'm quite passionate about the relationships I've already made within the council and the support that we've had, and also the relationships that we're continuing to build. But I think it's just really important to say that as a corporate parenting service, it's just really exciting for me. Yes, we have had some teething issues. Those are now resolving. We have recruited to a new senior advocate and also a IV coordinator now, independent visiting coordinator, who is they're both going to be starting in the next 2 weeks, which is really exciting for us. So there will be more management oversight than there was previously, which is again really important to us. We have some excellent advocates who've 2P'd over to us or transferred over to us from the previous provider. We've done some corporate and compliance training with them, and we've also made sure every one of them is now qualified to an MVQ level 3 in advocacy. The IVs that we have had transferred over have also gone through a very strong package of training and ensuring that they're compliant with NIAS's way of doing things rather than the previous provider, which takes a bit of time. Obviously, there's new systems to learn, there's new processes. So in 6 months we've been in place. I think we've managed quite well, but we're obviously aiming to do better. And I think we're now in a position where growth can be managed appropriately and purposefully. Again, really interested to hear about your young unaccompanied asylum-seeking young people who are coming through from different countries. Our IV service is very keen to support any young person to hopefully move into a community that they know of. Things like just helping them to get on a bus and go somewhere and those sort of things. IVs are really, really useful for those things. So we'll be very excited to get and to ensure that those young people are referred into our service. We have 13 matches in our IV service, and we've just made a new one in Cornwall for one of your young people who's placed out of borough, which is really exciting as well. And it's one of the things that, because we have a national service in both advocacy and in IV, we can go and link in with other NIAS organisations in those areas and ensure that those young people that are placed out of borough can have either advocacy or an IV given to them. And yeah, we attended the Ofsted meetings recently and were able to progress forward. Again, another one of the things that's very positive is the fact that any young person who lives in Dorset can refer in for advocacy and support, which I think is really exciting because some local authorities do limit the number of young people who can access services. And that's something that's, again, very forward-thinking and very outward-looking, which I think is really positive. And of course, I'm very keen to answer any questions that anybody might have. Oh.
Quickly say thank you to you for those kind words. It's nice to know that you think we're moving in the right direction. I have to say that all of us here, right at the very start, have always said that we regard our children in care as hugely important, and if a service isn't good enough for our own children, then it isn't good enough for our children in care either. And that's the ethos under which we work, and everyone, I think, is signed up to that. I've got a question from Councillor Stella Jones and then from Councillor Carol Jones.
Yes, sir. For many years, I was an independent visitor with Action for Children. And an independent visitor just goes along with the youngster and has fun. Goes out like abseiling and roller skating and all the fun things. You don't turn up with a clipboard. You don't make notes about what the youngster says to you. You just have a really good time and you keep that going month after month after month and become a really good friend. Someone that the youngster can talk to without having to think that is going to be noted and used for anything else. So, and in the opposite, the advocate actually has to take youngsters to meetings and follow reports, and is completely different. I'm a little bit concerned now that the independent visitors in the advocacy are going to be mixed. And I would hate to think that independent visitors were no longer just the fun person, but were also being used for taking notes, used for meetings and things like that. So can I be assured that independent visitors are really just going to be the fun person for that young person?
Sorry. Absolutely. There is no mixture between our advocates and our IVs. We recruit separately, we train separately, and we manage separately. So there is no mixture between the two. They are a completely different service. We do that because, as you say, the advocate is there to support the young person as an independent person, to help them to think about what they want to say to their professional network or anybody else, and to support them to ensure that they get their voices heard during meetings and those sorts of things. The IV absolutely is only there to take the young person out, have fun, enjoy themselves. The only thing they may do is give us themes that might come up, which can be shared as part of our case studies, those types of things, and feedback loops always need to be closed, so we want to give as much as we can. They can also advise young people to seek support. They can also advise young people to get an advocate and make a referral for an advocate. But there is absolutely no way we would ever use an IV as an advocate. No way.
Thank you. Councillor Jones, Carol Jones.
You'll have to excuse my naivety here. I'm just wondering if there's any crossover between a personal advisor and an advocate and how that actually works together seamlessly.
There is an overlay, there, without a doubt. However, one of the things we are very keen to do is not to overstep on that. So one of the things we look at is how we work together with the PAs, but also, sorry, the personal advisors, but also with the social workers as well, to ensure that we don't overstep boundaries. And we're very clear with young people that we are independent and that we are here just for them and to listen to them. And also that we're, you know, the element of being paid to be there has to still be part and parcel of an advocacy role, whereas it isn't for an IV. For an independent visitor, they are completely voluntarily there. But yes, there can be, and we try very hard to work alongside a clear boundary between what is the responsibility for the PA and what is the responsibility for the advocate. Yes, it can, but for the best will, because everybody's trying their best to help and support a young person. And I think sometimes people can overstep boundaries, but I think just we have to be very clear. We're very clear with our management oversight of advocates to ensure that we keep those boundaries and challenge them to think, is that your job or is that the PA's job? Is that your job or is that the social worker's role? So we're very clear that we do that. Matt and I can talk all the time and will do more and more as our relationships build, to ensure that we don't overstep those boundaries. And I want honest feedback from social workers and PAs if they feel we are overstepping. And I also want advocates to tell me if they feel that, you know, social workers are not playing ball with them as well. So we're very keen to have those two-way communications keep going as much as we can.
Thank you. Okay, Richard.
Yeah, in years gone by, there's been opportunities to meet advocates and young people at events. I think there was a photographic thing I remember going not too distant future past, which was really interesting because you got a chance to get a little bit of feedback and to informally chat to without doing a survey, and it clearly was, you know, a great, I would say affection, but, you know, a real connection and a really valued service, really important. So I'm sure you're doing a wonderful job in your new role, but will you be doing anything like that in the future? Thank you.
Absolutely, we'll be happy to invent, and I've written down on here, Care Leavers Week, and I'm also very keen to ensure that any events that come up, and particularly with participation as well, if any events come up that we can be a part of, to be a part of that. And that might be advocates, it might be the senior advocate, it might be some IVs coming along. But we're very keen to be as involved as we can be with ensuring that young people hear about us and see us on the ground, as well as just, you know, meeting up with us when they need us.
Thank you. Richard, okay. Anybody else?
Yeah, as there's no further questions, I'd just like to jump in. And there's just one sentence that I particularly like, and it says, as we're having a lovely fuzzy moment this evening, I'd just like to highlight this. It says, NES also works with young people to develop their self-advocacy skills and the confidence to advocate for themselves, which will grow into a lifelong skill. I think that's excellent, and I'd love to see that moving forwards, even though it might put some people out of a job.
I'm hoping it will put us out of a job, because that's what I want ultimately. I want young people to feel confident to advocate for themselves, and one of our journeys is around self-advocacy skills. We do workshops for young people. We also do workshops for social workers as well, to talk about the skills that we look at and develop, so we can keep that alive for young people, but also so we can share skills, but also the social workers can share skills with us. We do a lot of work around non-instructive advocacy as well, with young people with additional needs, from communication disabilities to developmental issues. And we are developing more and more tools in our toolkit, if you like, to be able to do that. I will say, I think we have been very lucky with the service that we have inherited, and the advocates that have TUPE'd over to us have been very skilled, and they are coming over with a really good sound knowledge and understanding of the young people in Dorset, and are teaching us as much as we're helping them. So I'm hoping that we will see that gradually grow, but there's no disrespect meant and intended towards the previous providers in any way.
And I think we're all going to be looking forward to continuing working with you and hearing your reports as they go on. So that report was just for our information. I think we've all got taken on board all of that and noted, so that's great. Thank you. Item 12 is the future governance of Corporate Parenting Board. That's Louise.
Good evening. My name is Louise Drury. I'm the Head of Service for Children in Care and Care Leavers. And I think, having listened to many of the discussions that we've been having this evening has really sort of all led to this paper very, very elegantly, if I may say. Our Corporate Parenting Board really provides that forum for us to have the regular detailed discussions of issues, workshops, and engagement with our children in care and young people leaving care, ensuring that we have the right people in attendance so that we can really able to influence change informed by the views of our young people and the people who are in attendance at this meeting. So currently, our arrangement is that our Corporate Parenting Board meets 7 times a year, but many of these meetings are held as formal committees and are meetings held in public. The agendas often have reports for noting and for noting and challenge, but very few actually require a formal decision to be made. And I think much of the conversation that I've heard this evening has been about the opportunities for members of this board wanting to really get underneath issues, to get closer to our young people, to have conversations with our young people, and probably different spaces and places that are offered within a formal meeting, such as this evening's meeting. And we know that in other local authorities, there is a much greater focus on having the opportunity to have informal meetings where we are able to get alongside our young people, have different conversations, having the opportunity to have probably those more honest and detailed conversations that we really can't have when we're in a public meeting for fear of not wanting to disclose personal identifiable information in relation to our children in care and care leavers. And I think really our determination is not only to provide the opportunities to be closer to our young people and really understand the issues that are important to them, but also to be able to provide a much richer experience for our members of Corporate Parenting Board as well. And so the proposal that is presented this evening is about us having a single formal annual meeting of Corporate Parenting Board that would be held in public, and this would provide us with the opportunity to receive all of those annual statutory reports and also to agree the annual report as well. And then alongside that, the remainder of meetings that will be held throughout the year will be held informally, using different locations, different methods of engaging stakeholders, having conversations with children and young people to ensure that the board is really accessible and encourage the very best input from ourselves, but also from our young people and everybody who's taking part in those meetings. I know that many of us will have fond memories of the previous meeting that we had with our foster carers, our young people, and that was just, albeit limited by the screen, it just gave us a much richer conversation and debate and dialogue. So the proposal really is around us having themed meetings. So we can see in the report, so thinking about engagement. So engagement is really key. So we're thinking that we'll probably want to have two themed meetings around engagement. Sufficiency, thinking about all of the the experiences of our young people in residential care in Dorset, and also, having that quality assurance of our residential care settings. Safeguarding education, employment and training, health and well-being, and also, close to your heart, Councillor, care leavers as well. So I think I would also, alongside this, really welcome or offer the welcome to invite members of the board to be champions for each of these themed meetings, to work alongside officers, having the opportunity to, whether it is meeting with our young people, walking in particular places and spaces where young people are saying, actually, I'm not too sure I feel too safe in this space. So walking with them, or whether it is actually working alongside an officer undertaking an audit, or doing another piece of work such as that. So this is really the proposal that we have, and I would like to offer it to members to discuss.
Louise, I think this is a terrific piece of work, and to my view, the way forward. So I'm opening up to members to ask questions, to give your feedback, make suggestions, please. Carol.
Thank you. I particularly would like to engage with some of the youngsters here, that the youngsters perhaps we haven't seen, the ones that are having issues, the ones that perhaps have been struggling educationally, the ones that are not in education or training or employment, particularly that area, and to try and really look at why, and actually just talk to them about what their hopes and dreams are, and try and find pathways for them to use. So I'm just particularly keen that we actually get to see more of the young people that we haven't ever yet seen. Thank you.
Yeah, I think this is the way forward. I'd certainly be interested in being involved in residential care, particularly also looking at private provision, because though I looked at, never been in a private children's residential, how does that compare, from my memory, because it's a while ago now, residential in-house provision, and obviously our new exciting harbour project, etc. The only thing I would say on this, I wouldn't like to lose track of the data set. I wouldn't want to wait a year to see the data set, and I think that provokes questions, seeing those and being reminded that things are getting better or not changing or getting worse. I think that's important. So I think that's the one thing that we ought to try and, I'm sure we can still have that in an informal setting, because we're not making recommendations, it's just having a conversation, and that perhaps should be something at the beginning of every meeting. I don't know what you think about that, Chairman.
What I'm going to do is listen to members, and then Matt and Sarah Jane will come in and answer your questions there, so they've got a note of them. So if we have Stella and then Kathy, please.
Yeah, I think Richard said some of what I was going to say. I think we need to look at the data and maybe meet twice a year or rather than once a year, but at least get the data regularly. And as for the 5-6 items here, I've already said I'd like to be involved in 2 of them, in safeguarding and the education. And I think it's good that members should get involved in these things. And having meetings elsewhere is a good idea.
Thank you. Kathy?
Yeah, I think it would be great to get more involved with our young people, and the workshops look interesting. I'm slightly concerned that we'll lose the challenge that the more formal setting gives us the opportunity to give to officers. So, I'm with Stella on probably two meetings a year minimum.
Thank you. Matt and Sarah Jane, do you want to come in on that, Sarah Jane?
Thank you, Chair. My experience of working in this way means that you can bring more challenge, because whilst the meetings are informal, my experience is that members get to go to the places where young people are, ask the question, and then come back. And sometimes members have chose to write just a very brief report to be able to give that to the board, and then officers have been able to come back and have that response. So I absolutely understand, Councillor Lugg, why you might be thinking that there'll be less challenge. My experience is there's more. It's just the way that we make sure we manage that so that your challenge is visible, our challenge is visible, and that we're joining those dots, really. But I would recommend that we somehow, and Louise will be able to do this much better than I'm saying it, but somehow, if you make the decision you want to go forward with this, give you some kind of template as to what that will look like, and to make sure we'll still have the data set, most definitely. We need to be ambitious to bring our children's stories into that data set more, so it's not just data. I know our participation team and our advocacy people will help us to do that. So all of those things will help, I think.
I'm sure that's the case, and I'm sure that this is going to be an evolving process. I think, I don't think any of us suppose that we're going to change from this system to another system overnight and get it right. So we have to be prepared to evolve. Councillor Parry.
Thank you. Certainly, I was an advocate for a public accountability for corporate parenting board, and in the old DCC days, when I first came on the council, and a number of us used to meet in the sort of basement committee rooms, and it all seemed very, we never saw the presence of a child or a young person in those meetings back in the day. It was very much seen and not heard. I'm very glad we moved, as Dorset Council, out of that place into a public accountability. And I do think we do need to retain a public presence as a corporate parenting board. But I also say that the challenge to all councillors is that in those informal settings is that we increase the rigour of scrutiny, because we will have the freedoms to be asked those searching questions and visit locations that ordinarily we wouldn't be, and discussions with young people that ordinarily we wouldn't be able to put in a public forum. So it's good opportunity for us, but also the importance of retaining a public presence as a corporate parenting board and our commitment as councillors to children and young people.
Thank you very much. Yes, I wonder whether 2 meetings might be better than only 1, but again, I think that we can evolve that as it goes along, and it may be that because we're doing more informal workshop work, that those 2 formal meetings will be so much more focused that they won't be quite so long, because we'll be focusing them so much better, and it'll be a much more rigorous use of our time in the other meetings, because we'll know better what questions we need and want to ask always, hopefully. That's my feeling. Andrew, you wanted to come back?
Thank you. Yes, just in brief conversation with officers here, happy to ensure there are at least two meetings, public meetings a year for corporate parenting.
Yes, thank you. Yes, very happy to do that. And also, I wouldn't want us to think that the lack of formality doesn't actually lead us to be very formal in our challenge to each other. And also, I think it does provide us with the opportunity to still welcome reports, welcome information, but how we respond to that and how we work together within in a better way. I think that this is what this will give us the opportunity to be doing.
Interesting, Andrew made a point that just used the word scrutiny, and it's something that's perplexed me, is how we deal with that, because we're not actually a scrutiny committee. There are scrutiny committees, and issues, you quite often get a situation where the same things is discussed at scrutiny in a slightly different way. We should be examining the data, the processes, and if we think there's a problem, it should go to them to look into depth. So we've got to be careful that that's perhaps the one issue that isn't, are we scrutiny or not? I don't think we are. Perhaps we shouldn't be solutionising necessarily. And if it's a process, something's wrong with the process, then scrutiny should be delving into that. I think. I might be wrong, but...
Andrew, did you want to come back on that? How do you feel?
Richard raised a very fair point there, which is actually is the purpose of Corporate Parenting Board to be an overview? Is it a purpose to be audit, or is it a purpose to be scrutiny? And actually, in many respects, you touch all 3 points at different points of the year, depending on what it is we're looking at. But clearly, I think there's great credibility in the board's opinion in any of those areas when it gets forwarded on to the appropriate overview scrutiny or audit committee. So I wouldn't shy away from saying that you have a foot in those camps, because I think very much Corporate Parenting Board does. But it's not necessarily solely the purpose to be scrutiny or solely to be the purpose of audit. It's where you wish to be guided. But I appreciate the predicament is where that feeds through into the sort of chain of command, if you like.
Andrew, I wonder whether that's a little piece of work that we maybe need to do to get a sharper definition of the remit of the board, so that we do know where we sit within that scrutiny audit field. We've said all along that we're not quite sure. It's not a perfect fit, is it? So perhaps we need to do a little bit of work as we move on with the changes. Sarah Jane?
Thank you, Chair. I'm going to venture into the depth of my knowledge around the governance of Corporate Parenting Board. We are all collectively here to give oversight and scrutiny and monitoring the offer that we have for our children in care and care leavers. So just as Councillor Parry says, we do all three. And I do wonder, I just think, members, you're going to really embrace the opportunity to step into the lives of our children in a way that you've not been able to through doing things in this way. And I think that will lead you very much to think about, is it a conversation that we're having? Is it a challenge to officers? Is it a challenge to us as to what our offer is for our children? Is it a challenge to the council? And then it will help to think about where the next step is, because of course we're part of a process, really, as is evidenced by our care leavers delivery group, which feeds into here. And it doesn't mean that we can't feed into somewhere else. But I think the opportunity is also what's really lacking from this meeting are any of our young people. And we have very competent and confident young people, but this isn't necessarily the space that they would feel comfortable in. And I know that as we go forward, I'm quite sure that we'll have a co-chair for you, Chair, of a young person, but in an informal setting that might be something that's more achievable to start off with. So I think that it's a case of really trying to see how these things work, and then politically keeping, the right escalations, if that's the word that you want to use. If we want to share that information at different points in the council, there's a way that we can do that.
Thank you. I think that sums it up really quite well, and I'm very happy with the recommendation that we do try this method of working, because I think it will be very much better for our young people, help us to engage with them in a much better way, a much more efficient and effective way. And we don't have to set everything in stone. We can, the whole point of this is that we evolve and find the very best methods of working. But I think that this is the right way forward. Andrew Kirby, you wanted to speak?
No, I actually didn't, Chair, because I love everything about this, but and I think that as Louise mentioned earlier on, I think that the whole meeting, the whole of this Corporate Parenting Board has brought us up to this one point. So I'm thrilled to see those recommendations, and I would just go for it.
We've had suggestions of people who are interested in champion roles. Everybody seems happy with the recommendation. Councillor Carol Jones?
Could we still just get the data set perhaps emailed to us once a quarter? And perhaps the suggestion should be that if anything falls, let's say more than 20% in a downward spiral, that we have a formal meeting. Is that a possibility?
I'm sure we can do something around that data set, because we're all very anxious to monitor it all the time.
Yeah, and actually, Councillor Jones has raised a really good point about the data coming through. Is there any chance we could have access to the live data through the council's data reporting tools? Or is that just too crazy?
I'm not sure how that works in terms of the technology side of things, but certainly in terms of the data pack, I'm more than happy and happy to have that data pack to each of the boards so that you're well started on that key information.
With that, yes? Yeah, yeah, good. So it looks as though we're going with the recommendation. We'll work that up. Good, thank you very much indeed. Item 13, next meeting.
Yeah, thank you. Let me jump. Is that okay? Do you mind? So the next meeting we have is a formal meeting to bring in the last of our annual reports. It's going to be set on the 28th of April. And again, I'd turn to maybe Kate Critchell just to confirm that we could use this, that we continue to use this for the formal meeting. Absolutely, thank you. As I thought, so we will be booked in here. It will be in person. And then in terms of the meetings moving forward, obviously we will need to advise of those spaces and places that we'll be having those informal meetings. Thank you.
Everybody, oh, Stella?
Those who've offered to be champion roles, what happens now?
Louise, how would you like us to carry that forward in champion roles?
Thank you. I've taken some notes down as to who has shown particular interest. I might be nominating some people. Absolutely. I'll have conversations with you individually. And then what I'd like to do is really propose probably a conversation with the lead officer for that particular area. And then together to collaborate and then plan the activities that we might want to be interested in undertaking in understanding that area much better. So I think it's absolutely a do with, and so that everybody gets the most out of it that possibly can.
Let them do this then, shall we? Lovely. Well done. Thank you.
Oh, sorry.
Thank you. Right, that sounds like a plan, doesn't it? Terrific. Thank you very much. It's 18:53, so that is a record for us, isn't it? Thank you all very much indeed. Look forward to seeing you and exciting times ahead. Thank you. Thank you very much.